Hey there. Thanks for clicking on this video. And first, I'll introduce myself. My name is TJ Rumler, and I am the Trauma Informed Specialist for Greenville County Schools. If you're new to the school district this year, or if you just haven't had a chance to, if we haven't had a chance to meet each other yet, what that means is as a clinical social worker, I work a lot with school staff, um, at all levels to try to help us understand what are the best ways that we can, one, understand the effects of trauma, two, kind of recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma, three, respond throughout our buildings with policies and practice to make sure that we implement that knowledge into our DNA and our education practices, and four, resist the urge and basically the tendency to re-traumatize students and adults who have had a background of trauma. So what I want to do right now is take just a few minutes of your time to give us maybe some tips that for best practices as through a trauma informed lens as we transition back into the school year. So I'll kind of go through some of these, and if you're interested in a graphic of these videos, please just shoot me an email. You can find me on Outlook. I'm the only Rumler, Rumler. One of the first things I want to make sure that we remember is that we are humans, and going through COVID together, even though we have been together, we've been separated, physically distanced, and we are going through a shared trauma right now. We are dealing with a lot of uncertainty. You probably have can relate to feelings of helplessness, maybe even a loss of hope at time of what the future is going to hold. Even still right now, we don't know what the future is going to hold or really how the school year is going to unfold. And one thing research has shown us is that when we as adults are walking with a high level of stress, that can be passed on to our students and to our coworkers. There's a concept called co-dysregulation that can happen. One of my favorite quotes is that while a dysregulated adult cannot help regulate a dysregulated child, I think we all know that if we're not well, we can't help someone else who is not well. But one of the things to also remember is that a dysregulated adult can dysregulate a regulated child. So what that means is if I'm working at a default baseline high level of stress, if somehow I have kids coming into my classroom that are not, I can bring them up to my level without even meaning to. And there's a lot of research that shows that. So first, and like on the graphic, it gives the example of making sure we put our own oxygen mask on first. So if you need to do an exercise in self care and to learn more about what that means, contact me and we can do a self care training at your school, or get someone to come in and do it. But I encourage you to really make sure that you're doing things to take care of yourself. Take some deep breaths throughout the day. Turn that phone off, when you need to. Quit checking emails when you need to, and really take time to rest. Pay attention to how you're eating, how you're moving. Are you exercising? Are you getting your are you getting your heart rate up at times in a healthy way? And also how you're sleeping. We have to pay attention to how we're sleeping. Sleep experts would recommend that we get 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep at night. So that's something I would just encourage you to, take very seriously. Second is, while there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now, um, three things that trauma can really do are take away someone's or affect someone's ability to feel safe and connected. It can really affect someone's ability to feel power over their own body and over their own environment. And three, it can really affect someone's ability to feel control over can I control what's happening in my life? Can I control my future? And so COVID has taken a lot of that. It's taken away a lot of our ability to feel balanced and to feel some kind of control over what's going to happen. So if it's bad for us as adults, it's going to definitely be bad for our kids. Um, and so what I would recommend is to work together to find whatever way that you can help build a sense of routine, structure, those kinds of things. They are highly correlated with a feeling of safety. So like, you can't see it, but right here on my wall, I have my daily routine listed out. And that starts with hygiene, like, to making sure that And I say this for us, not just our kids. Make sure we're taking care of everything from hygiene to exercise to connecting with people. And just as important of getting those responsibilities done during the day, I encourage you to also schedule in time to make sure you turn it off, to you give yourself a chance to literally and figuratively breathe, to reset, to rest, find time to play. So take that first. Let's get that for ourselves, but then also let's make sure that we're incorporating that into our classroom, whatever that looks like, y'all. And again, I'm not an expert on that. I'm not an expert in virtual school, but whatever we can do to make things consistent, predictable. Predictability is also very correlated, highly correlated positively with safety. So some of those things we need to we try to make sure we're cognizant of, right? This one, and I want you to hear me when I say this. I'm not saying content is not important, but we have to more than ever prioritize connection before content. And what do I mean by that? Simply Science will back me up on this, and it says that if we are not connected, we cannot provide content. We cannot teach. We cannot correct. There is no correction without connection. So especially if you're dealing with a student or yourself or a friend that is dealing with a high level of stress, we have to relate with that person. We have to help that person get regulated before we can connect with them at all. And I'll kind of give you an example of that. And some of you, if you've already been through ACEs training or heard any of my trainings, you've probably heard the Dan Siegel, like the hand model of the brain. But if I'll teach you real quick. If you put your hand up like this, imagine this is the brain stem, right? So that's that's the first part of the brain that's developed. And that's going to really govern things like basic needs. So if we're hungry, if we're tired, if we're sleepy, the brain stem is going to kind of take care of communicating that those needs need to be met. If you open up your hand, wrap your thumb in. So this part of our brain right here in the middle is the limbic system part of our brain. It governs feelings, thoughts, emotions, things like that. And this is really central to our ability to feel connected, to form relationships. And the thumb is representing what we call the amygdala. The amygdala is a small, like almond-sized little thing in the middle of your brain that I like to call the smoke alarm in our brain, because the reason for that is it's always scanning our environment for threat. And what happens is it lets us know when there's a threat, and I'll come back to that. If you wrap your fingers down, where the two middle knuckles right here lap over the thumb, that's our prefrontal cortex. That's what's allowing you to sit here and listen to this video right now. The reason it's my favorite part of the brain is because when we're teaching, when we're doing a lesson with students, it's what allows them to focus, to think about risk versus reward. The thing is this part of our brain is not fully developed until our mid-20s at the earliest. Some science even says, especially for men, maybe as late as 40 now. So here's what happens, is that when we're walking around, right, this is a regulated state where all these parts of the brain are working together. But when we see a threat, whether it's real or perceived, this amygdala is going to take over and we flip our lid. So what happens is this part of our brain that we like, that we need, the cortex, it's offline because the safety and protection part of our brain has dibs. Now, remember I said real or perceived threat. So a lot of our students and a lot of us right now, because we're feeling threatened by COVID, are walking around like this a lot. So by connecting with someone and making them feel safe, we can help them get regulated. We can help them bring all that back on. That's the reason, connection before content, because if we don't connect with somebody who is up here, they're not going to hear any of that content. You can say it all day long, but they're not going to internalize it, and they're not going to get that really, processed into their life. Anyway, that was a lot. And I will say that too. A lot of us are worried about catching kids up on standards, but we invented the standards, right? So, and I encourage you really to remember how trauma can look. You likely have already had an ACEs training. If not, you'll probably have one this year or next. But if you have no idea what you like, TJ, what do you mean? What is trauma? What is this trauma-informed stuff? Pause the video. Go look on YouTube and type in Nadine Burke Harris in YouTube. Watch her TED Talk. It's a 16-minute Cliff Notes version of the Adverse Childhood Experience study. And what we've learned is that trauma, especially unresolved trauma, can look like a lot of behavior problems. It can manifest itself in students acting out in temper tantrums. It can manifest itself in depression, anxiety, kids shutting down. It can manifest itself in ways that look a lot like ADHD. It can manifest itself in a lot of different ways that if we don't ask the right questions, we can criminalize it. We can punish trauma. So what I would encourage you to do, just a really simple guided question that you may already be familiar with. As we're going through this year, if you have a kid acting in a way that is not in line with what we need, I'm not necessarily saying that we have to accept that or to allow that to continue, but start through the lens not of what's wrong with you. Try to start from compassion and ask what might have happened to this child. And lead with that compassion, lead with empathy, and see if we can figure out if there's really a reason. Because 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find that what that behavior is trying to communicate, the need that behavior is trying to meet, is something that we can do without punishing, without excluding that child from the classroom, and we're able to actually relate better and to continue to educate that child in the classroom and keep them connected in our community. And lastly, I said it before, kind of, I'll say it again. None of us are really experts in this right now. None of us have been through COVID in the past. We're all going through it together. We're going to mess up. I ask and I encourage you all, and myself too, I encourage us to lead with grace, lead with compassion and empathy in the way we deal with each other, in the way that we deal with our children. And when we mess up, let's support each other. Let's lift ourselves up. Let's lift each other up. And let's find room to realize that we're all going through this together. And our goal is to get through it safely, without causing harm, and just the best way we can, right? And I believe if we do those things, if we lead with compassion and grace, that we'll at least come through it on the other side together and as whole as possible. I'm honored to serve with you all. These were just some basic tips. If you have any additional questions, please look me up, shoot me an email. I'm definitely available. I love doing this work. I love our kids of Greenville County, and I'm thankful to serve alongside of you. I've had the opportunity to get to know a lot of you personally, and I am consistently, I was telling Dr. Royster the other day how proud I am right now to be an employee of Greenville County Schools and the way that we have really just rose up and taken this COVID situation and handled it like professionals, handled it like heroes. And that goes out to you all. So thank you for allowing me to serve with you, and please let me know how I can help going forward. Have a great day.